All right. Today we're going to get into the story of Anatoly Bykov. We're talking about a guy who became pretty much the most feared man in all of Siberia, an uncrowned king, you could say, whose entire empire was really built on blood.
You know, to really get a grip on his power, you gotta understand the vibe he created. For decades, just saying his name got a very specific reaction: fear. I mean, people would literally start whispering like he could actually hear them, as if just saying the name Bykov could get you in serious trouble.
And then, after almost 30 years of being completely invincible, this number pops up: 13. 13 years. That's the prison sentence that finally broke the silence, the one that just shattered the whole myth of the untouchable man. So let's get into the verdict. On September 7th, 2021, this really historic decision comes down. Anatoly Bykov, this uncrowned king of the Krasnoyarsk region, he's sentenced for organizing the murders of two of his own guys, Alexander Naumov and Kirill Vitenko, way back in 1994. And honestly, this conviction was a huge shock. Why? Because Bykov had this legendary reputation for being completely untouchable. He was a master at beating the system, you know? He would always walk out of court a free man. It didn't matter how serious the charges were. So the big question is, right? How does a former gym teacher become the shadow ruler of this huge region? Well, to figure that out, we've got to go back, way back, to the beginning, to the absolute chaos of Russia in the 1990s.
Yeah, his story starts a million miles away from the world of oligarchs and assassins. He grew up in this tiny town, Nazarovo, became a boxer, did his time in the army, and then he comes home to be a PE teacher. I mean, it's such an ordinary start for what turned into an absolutely extraordinary and brutal career. What's really incredible here is just how fast he rose. In that crazy free-for-all environment of the 90s, he took his boxing skills and put them into a new kind of business: racketeering. He just consolidated power through pure, brutal violence, and he quickly got the nickname Tolia the Bull. And he was smart. He completely outmaneuvered and just eliminated the old guard of criminals. You know, the traditional guys, the thieves-in-law, with their codes and rules. He replaced them with something totally new: a super disciplined and ruthlessly loyal crew of young athletes. And they answered to one person, and one person only: him. But Bykov figured it out pretty quick. Street rackets, that's small-time stuff. The real prize, the big game, was the Krasnoyarsk aluminum plant, or Kraz for short. We're talking one of the biggest industrial assets in the entire world. That's where the real money was. So you see him transitioning, right, from just a street-level enforcer to a major player in these incredibly violent corporate fights that were known as the Aluminum Wars. He started out just buying up workers' privatization vouchers right there at the factory gates. He was using his muscle to protect other powerful business guys until, of course, he became one of them. And this is where it gets really interesting, because you start to see the two faces of Anatoly Bykov. Publicly, he was this benevolent father figure, Petrovich, sponsoring events for kids, building churches. But privately, he ruled through absolute terror. Anyone who was a rival, anyone he even suspected of being a traitor, they were eliminated. No hesitation. There's this chilling quote from one of his associates that just perfectly sums up his whole philosophy. Apparently, when someone would ask him to spare a life, Bykov would kind of deflect and say, well, God might forgive them. But that forgiveness, yeah, that was always delivered through the barrel of a Kalashnikov. Okay, so obviously as Bykov's power grew, so did his list of enemies. And in the late 90s, he makes this huge mistake. He decides to back this famous general, Alexander Lebed, for governor of the whole region. But guess what happens? After Lebed wins the election, he completely turns on his old ally. The new governor famously said that declaring war on the state is just foolishness. And just like that, the massive machine of the state starts to grind away, targeting Big Ulf and eventually forcing him to get out of the country. This is where the story gets wild. It leads to this incredible sting operation. To catch Bykov red-handed, the cops literally faked a murder. And then they got him on tape asking the supposed hitman for all the details. Did you get him in the head? Where's the weapon? And confirming the kill. It's unbelievable. And yet, even after being caught on tape ordering a murder, he walked. I mean, can you believe it? He was actually convicted, but the sentence was suspended. They let him go right there in the courtroom.
That moment, right there, is what cemented his legend as someone who was completely, totally above the law. So what finally brought him down? It was an old friend, a guy named Vladimir Todorenkov, who went by the nickname Todorin. He was the hitman Bykov had called to take out Naumov and Vitenko way back in '94. And after serving his own long prison sentence, he finally decided it was time to talk. And Todorin's testimony, that was the whole key. It was the direct evidence that prosecutors have been needing for decades. You see, he felt abandoned. He's watching Bykov live this life of luxury while he's rotting away in a prison cell. He basically decided, hey, if I have to answer for this crime, then so does the guy who gave me the order. And you know what? That testimony was all it took. That old 1994 cold case was suddenly reopened, and it led to the super dramatic Special Forces raid on Bykov's massive, lavish estate in May of 2020. The era of him getting away with everything was finally over. So the court found Todorin's story totally credible. Bykov gets sentenced to 13 years, and the authorities have been pretty clear that this might just be the beginning. They're now re-examining a bunch of other cold cases from the 90s. So what are we left with? This deep, deep contradiction at the very heart of his legacy. Was he a monster, or was he a benefactor? I mean, to so many people, he was the man who brought nothing but terror to the region. But to others, he was Petrovich, this people's oligarch who actually brought a weird kind of order and even charity to a really chaotic time. And all that leaves us with one last question. Because even from behind bars, the shadow of Anatoly Bykov still looms large over Siberia. His whole story is just this brutal reminder of a time when a simple PE teacher could actually, for a while, become an absolute king.